I'm Becky Hammond, founder and strengths maven over at Isogo and isogostrong.com. Welcome to Isogo TV video podcast and now audio podcast too. Here on Isogo TV, we are fueling marriage connection, parenting grace, and work energy by focusing in on your strengths instead of fixating on your weakness. And we are in the third season of Isogo TV, and this is episode 64. During this mini-series, we are looking conflict right in the eye because we've been talking about the thing about conflict is if you're breathing, you experience it. So over these 6 episodes, we're exploring a path to conflict resolution from a strengths perspective and making right relationships at home and at work. And be sure to grab the free PDF Strengths-Based Conflict Resolution Path and Action Plan that follows along to mark your own progress in your path to conflict resolution. You can find that at isogostrong.com/conflict resolve. In this episode, we start at the heart of conflict resolution, which is your heart. Use your strengths and the targeted questions from this episode to be sure you're set up for success as you approach your conflict. Let's dive in. In our family, we live by this proverb: the heart is the wellspring of life. Your actions, behavior, and mindset flow from the condition of your heart. And this perspective certainly holds true in a sea of little humans swarming about my waist, constantly vying for their own toy, their own turn, their own way. We're born with that instinct. It's written on our hearts. And thereout flows our attitudes and our actions. And the same thing holds true into adulthood. To the degree we train ourselves to inspect our own heart and our core, we become attuned with what our attitudes, actions, and responses will be. As we inspect ourselves, often we find the root of our conflicts. Introspection is the first step in resolving a conflict, not an afterthought. Some years back, I had a client who had a huge aha moment regarding the tension in his relationships with his colleagues. He was a funny, relational person, yet wherever he went, he found that people were frustrated by his leadership. And as he sat through an intensive strengths workshop over a couple of days, bells and whistles started to blow. His top 5 strengths are achiever, responsibility, maximizer, analytical, and learner. As he began to inspect his heart and the lens of the world, he all of a sudden saw that the way that he used his strengths was contributing to the ongoing conflict and frustration he was experiencing. He considered himself a hardworking, detail-oriented, loyal boss who based his work in the pursuit of high standard of excellence and meaningful, hard data. And these are all good things. As he peeled back his strengths, he began to see them from the light of others. Instead of the characteristics he would describe, the people around him experienced him as never satisfied, workaholic, who intimidated people with accusational questions, and he had an uncanny ability to move the bar of success just out of reach. He inspected his heart and found some of this to be true. By reading about his strengths, he saw not only the value that he brings, but also the tension that he was causing by allowing his strengths to operate unchecked. So let's talk about a couple tools to inspect the heart. Much like my client experienced, there are some key tools that will help you inspect your own heart, your own contribution to the conflict, before you engage in resolving that conflict. So first, check the volume of your strengths. One of the most basic yet powerful word pictures that will help you inspect the state of your heart and the use of your talents is that of a volume dial. Imagine each of your strengths sitting out in front of you, each with its own volume dial. You have the choice in every encounter to tune the volume into the appropriate level. As an achiever myself, my natural tendency is to have the volume of my strength turned up to the max. It just feels so good to mark off a solid checklist every day. But on the introspection of my own heart, I've learned that max volume can get in the way of relationships and productivity, and it can hurt others in the process. So now when there's a conflict, I can reflect, did the use of my achiever talent contribute to this conflict? How about my other talents? In our Strengths Finder workshops, we talk through an activity using the volume dial philosophy. It can reveal some powerful insights about the state of your heart and the state of your strengths in your daily work and home life. So, tool number 2, make an honest assessment of your motivation. Beyond your strengths, though almost always related, the condition of our hearts leads to our part in a conflict. By inspecting the motivations and position of our hearts, we come to our conversation about conflict resolution with a clean slate and more of a humble state. It's the best predictor of success. For example, if my client had only understood the volumes of his strengths, he could have affected the way he used his strengths. This is a great first step. However, when he took it a step further and owned the truth that his heart was inclined toward contempt of those who have let him down, only then could he begin healing the relationships and getting long-term change in the tension in his relationships. By not merely looking out for our own interests, but also for the interests of others, we set a foundation for conflict resolution that's based in humility and a position of intellectual honesty that comes from the heart. And when your heart is positioned well, you can be ready to enter healthy conflict resolution. So, will you go there? Inspecting your own heart takes a willingness to really, truly resolve it. And it takes you fighting for the space to really allow yourself openness to hear and to see your own heart. But yeah, it's so worth it when you come to the resolution conversation with a heart that's open and it's ready. To help follow along and get to the bottom of your conflicts, you will not want to miss the free PDF that we're offering with this series. It's called Strengths-Based Conflict Resolution Path and Action Plan over at isogostrong.com/conflict resolve. So be sure to go and grab that right now if you haven't already. Ultimately, my dream would be to get to the bottom of every conflict in every home and in every workplace across the world. By orienting our mind toward our strengths, I know we can get there. So I'd love to ask you to share Isogo TV, the video or the audio version, with your circles on Facebook, Instagram, or right there in your own home or your office. And if you like Isogo TV, please leave a 5-star review over at iTunes. It not only means a lot to me, but it also helps others find this podcast resource too. I'm glad you were here today to get into the nitty-gritty of conflict resolution in your marriage, your parenting, or your work by using your strengths. And I hope you join me next time on Isogo TV.